Oh, welcome back to Ethical Adulthood with me, Andrea Fiondo. This video is revisiting the second capacity, rupture and the ability to repair. In the third episode of Ethical Adulthood, I introduced rupture and repair as the second capacity. I want to stay with this a little longer and look more closely at how it actually functions in our lived experience. Because repair, well, it sounds simple until we're the one who caused harm. Or we're the one who has to decide what to do when someone turns towards us after a rupture. So let's begin with just a brief remembering of the frame. Within the Ethical Adulthood framework, we named 5 capacities that support our desire to live as a good person without relying on innocence, purity, certainty, or guarantees. The second capacity is the ability to repair after we've broken a bond in relationship. Now, bonds can take many forms. Some are explicit agreements to respect, to care, to honor boundaries, to be honest. Others are more implicit, trust built over time, just through consistency, shared responsibility, emotional safety. Whatever the form, when rupture happens, something real is affected. And if we want to remain in integrity with that relationship, something in us has to turn back toward what occurred. Not to undo it, but to understand it more clearly and to take responsibility for our part in it. And psychology can help us understand our inner world, our thoughts, emotions, patterns, and parts. That kind of insight is valuable. But insight on its own does not repair a moment of impact. And it doesn't necessarily prevent the next rupture. We're not broken, but we may find that we are under-resourced in certain capacities. This one asks, what do we do after harm has occurred? Well, especially when we can't undo it. If we are in relationship, we will, at times, affect each other in ways that land as harm. Not necessarily because we intend to, and not necessarily because something is wrong with us, but because we are, at times, limited in what we can hold. When something becomes too much internally, too fast, too charged, too uncomfortable, parts of us may move quickly to restore a sense of stability. And sometimes that movement comes out sideways. A sharp word, withdrawal, a moment of control or dismissal or urgency. Or it may turn inward, numbing, overeating, shutting down, quiet self-abandonment. From one perspective, these are protective responses. And from another, they can create rupture. Repair is what becomes possible next once we have enough steadiness to turn back toward what happened. We're not trying to erase it. We are to take responsibility for it. Well, what we mean by rupture. Rupture is a break in connection that is felt. It isn't defined by what we meant. It is not defined by our internal experience. It's defined by how something lands. A raised voice that to the other feels frightening. A joke that lands as humiliation. Silence that feels like rejection. A moment where something important is missed. In many relationships, rupture becomes patterned, sometimes in visible ways, sometimes in quieter ones. A parent reacts, a child adapts. No one names it. And over time, it begins to feel like just how things are. In friendships, it may look like imbalance that goes unspoken until something small carries the weight of everything that hasn't been said. In partnerships, it may be sharp moments or a slow accumulation of missed repairs that begin to shape a sense of safety. And internally, rupture can look like turning against ourselves. I shouldn't feel this. I need to shut this down. These moments matter. They shape how we relate to others and to ourselves. You may be thinking that repair is the same as an apology. An apology can be a part of repair, but repair usually asks for something more grounded. It is not a performance of remorse. It is not a quick sorry to move things along, but a willingness to stay with what actually happened. Often, repair involves three movements: looking at what occurred without minimizing or reshaping it, making space for the impact, especially as the other person experienced it, and allowing something to change in a way that can be seen over time. I think in lived experience, the most difficult one of these three is the first one. To be able to sit with yourself or with the person you've harmed and truly look at what occurred without embellishment, without misremembering, without trivialization, without a reshape. The ability to look at what occurred without getting pulled back into the same inability to tolerate the discomfort that was there in the beginning. That's the hinge. That's what makes repair so difficult. That not only have we tolerated a very high level of discomfort and then re-regulated ourselves, but now we're being asked to go back to the very state that caused us to rupture in the first place and choose an entirely different set of capacities. That's why that tolerating discomfort part is such a priority in this framework. Not only do you have to increase your ability to tolerate levels of discomfort, but you have to actually metabolize it so that you can move to the next capacity. Look at what occurred without minimizing or reshaping it. Make space for the impact as the other person experienced it. And then, wow, this one isn't easy either. State that you're going to change in a way that can be seen over time, and then make that change. Because without these elements, the ability to stay with it, make space for it, and change the next outcome, a simple apology serves often more as just relief for the one offering it than as something that restores trust. So the third capacity in ethical adulthood was power. I just want to take a moment to remind us that power does shape this process. Repair is not symmetrical. The roles we occupy, parent, partner, teacher, employer, shape is what is needed. When we hold more power, there is often more responsibility to understand impact without placing the burden of that on the other person. And when we hold less power, while repair may not always feel safe or even possible, in those moments, creating distance, setting boundaries, or stepping away may be the more supportive and ethical choice. So let us not be confused about what I'm saying here. Repair is not always mutual. It is not always symmetrical. And it is not always available. So let's look at when we are the one who is repairing. If we look through a parts lens, it's often a protective part that moved first. And afterward, other parts may come in, a part that wants to explain, a part that wants to minimize, a part that feels deep shame, and a part that wants everything to return to normal as quickly as possible. That's a lot of parts. I dare say most of us have those parts functioning within us. And all of that is understandable. And still, repair often asks for something else, something steady, naming what we did as clearly as we can, staying open to the impact without arguing with it, remaining with the discomfort long enough to learn from it, and allowing the other person their response. because there is no guarantee that even the most perfect repair will soften a rupture for the other person. We don't need to do this perfectly, but we need to do it honestly. The repair isn't about restoring how we are seen. It's about restoring alignment with what we value. And sometimes even thoughtful repair does not restore the relationship. That's just true. That can be part of the cost of harm. Now let's look at when someone is repairing with us. There may be parts that want to accept quickly, others that feel cautious or unsure or still very much affected. It can help to stay connected to our own experience here. Repair tends to be shown over time through behavior, not just the right words. And when someone is trying to repair with us, we are allowed to take time, to ask for what we need, to maintain or create boundaries, and to decide what level of relationship feels right moving forward. So while it is true that most rupture and repair scenarios happen in relationship, some of them happen internally. When rupture happens internally, well, the repair is quieter, obviously, but just as meaningful. Sometimes we do or say things that are not in alignment with who we think we are. And we can really beat ourselves up. We've created a rupture within ourselves. And repairing that is every bit of a part of ethical adulthood as is repairing rupture with the ones that you love. So we might begin with some simple acknowledgments. I see what happened. I'm starting to understand why it happened. And I can try something different next time. This isn't about indulgence, and it certainly isn't about punishment. It's about rebuilding trust with ourselves. That we can feel things, hard things, without escaping. That we can act without abandoning ourselves. And that we can return. This matters so much in ethical adulthood because harm isn't something we can fully avoid. And if our only strategy is to try to be better or get it right every time, we may find ourselves overwhelmed by our own limits. But if we can stay with what happens just enough to see it clearly and take responsibility for our part, well, then something more stable begins to form. Not perfection. It's never perfect. What forms is reliability. And over time, people may come to feel that we don't disappear when things get difficult, that we are willing to look honestly at our impact, and that we are capable of change. And that builds a different kind of trust. And I'd like to reaffirm that these are capacities. Rupture and repair isn't a personality trait. It's a capacity that can be learned, practiced, strengthened. It draws most deeply from the ability to tolerate discomfort, recognize impact, and the willingness to act without certainty. When we are ethical, we return, not because it guarantees forgiveness, not because it restores everything to the way it was, but because it allows us to remain in integrity with each other and with ourselves. So in closing, repair, it doesn't guarantee forgiveness. It doesn't guarantee you'll be understood. It doesn't guarantee there will be a continuation of the relationship. It doesn't fix what happened. It's one way we take responsibility for it. And over time, what people often come to trust is not that we will not cause harm, but that we're willing to come back. Not perfectly, but with enough honesty and steadiness to try again.